Well, I mean, I think change is happening, and it's going in the right direction. Even in the last 5 years, we've seen a dramatic change in both public opinion and the policy reaction. My concern is that that change will not take place fast enough. You've got to bear in mind that for every year, every month that we delay the stock of greenhouse gases, not the flow, not the emissions that are associated with daily activities, but the stock, this stuff sits in the atmosphere for 10, 50, 100 years. So every year that we don't do something, that stock gets higher and higher. The amount of work we need to do in terms of emissions increases. So for every 10 years that you delay, you roughly double the costs of getting to the same stabilization point. The EU, for example, talks about stabilizing at 2 degrees. Well, had we begun this process 10, 20 years ago, 2 degrees would have been a perfectly reasonable place to stabilize at relatively low cost because the stock of greenhouse gases was quite low. We start today at close to the concentration of greenhouse gases that already gives you a 50-50 chance of 2 degrees. So in order to meet that probability with any degree of certainty, you'd have to not only stop emissions rising, but they have to go close to zero within the next decade. Now that's going to be incredibly expensive. It's too late. We've missed that opportunity.
If not impossible.
If not impossible. So every 10 years, every 5 years, every year, every month that we talk, I mean, to echo the previous commentator, every time that we don't act, we're increasing the costs of doing this. And as those concentrations rise, we increase the risks associated with some of the climate change problems. So that's my worry. I mean, we'll do this in the end, but we'll do it far too expensively, and we'll do it at a level of greenhouse gas concentrations that opens up some significant risks, which I hope won't materialize. But as we've seen this morning, the science can't tell you with certainty whether this or that risk is going to happen, but it can tell you that those risks are there and that you increase your vulnerability to them by not taking action. If we take action now, I mean, I'm very optimistic about human ingenuity. I think, almost half of the emission reductions that we need over the next 10, 20, 30 years can be undertaken through measures that cost nothing. In many cases, they save money. I'm talking here about efficiency measures in buildings, in transportation, in electricity generation, distribution, consumption. Those measures allow you to sustain the same living standards, but do it with much less of a burden on resources. You can also stimulate new technologies that promote growth, that promote the knowledge stock, that stimulate all sorts of other innovations that you couldn't possibly dream about. That's usually the way. And we've seen defense, a lot of money put into defense, that brings about huge civilian technological breakthroughs. One of the good things about putting money into defense, part perhaps from defense, is the technological innovations it brings about. Climate change will be the same. It'll bring about a revolution in the way we do things that could make us better off, not just in terms of environmental factors and human health and ecosystems, but actually in terms of material well-being. But we will have to change the way we do things, as we discussed today in the conference. There is no room for the kinds of waste that we become accustomed to, for the kinds of excess consumption. Those activities will either be regulated, banned, standardized, or become prohibitively expensive. But I don't think we'll be any the poorer for it. I think we can have very good, better living standards in a world that's much more resource efficient, cleaner, energy secure, and allows us to liberate resources to do other more productive things. Now, rich countries obviously have a responsibility to try and support development paths in poor countries that follow that route. They need to support financial plans, they need to provide access to technologies, but perhaps the most important thing that we need to do as citizens of rich countries is demonstrate to those countries that actually we can go down this route without compromising our growth. Because it's only natural that developing countries do feel that they're not going to compromise their growth aspirations and development aspirations. They only want to secure living standards that are comparable to ours, and rightly so, and they're not responsible for those greenhouse gas concentrations for the most part that I spoke about already. They are our responsibility. Remember that this stuff stays in the atmosphere for many tens of hundreds of years. So it's only right that they not only receive direct support from us, but that we start taking action early to show these countries that we are serious and that we can do this in a way that doesn't compromise our growth, and therefore so can they.